Hi, everyone, and welcome to our next episode of the Self Leadership Podcast. We believe that great leadership starts with the ability to fully lead yourself. But from experience, we know that that's not always easy. And that is why we invite brilliant guests, brilliant minds to our podcast to have conversations about their top 5 self leadership practices. And in today's episode, we are joined by Jessy Conflon, who I've had the privilege of working with together in the past. And I have always admired Jessy for her depth and her resilience. And I am incredibly excited to learn about how she goes about self-leadership today. Hi, Josh. And hi, Jessy. It's so exciting to have you here today.
Hi guys, it's a real pleasure to be on this podcast today, and I hope I can share some good value with you guys.
Brilliant. So, Jessy, I thought we could start our conversation off by you telling our listeners a bit more about yourself. Who is Jessy?
Who is Jesse? This is a big question. I co-founded my current activities. I co-founded a business called Yai, and what we do, we essentially improve the quality of AI generated content by fact checking it and also fixing all the hallucinations that comes from AI generated content. I have two other co-founders and we also have a team that works with us. And this in itself requires quite a lot of self-leadership, on a day-to-day basis.
Brilliant. And so that leads me straight to my next question, namely, what does self-leadership mean to you?
All right. So to me, I mean, I thought about this long and hard. To me, it's about being intentional about how I direct my time, my energy, and my focus. You know, as a founder, as somebody running business, your time is your most precious resource, and it's so critical to choose what are my priorities every single day, every single week, every single month. And once I've set these priorities and I've chosen intentionally how to direct my time, energy, and focus, I can reflect back on, my learning, and adjust, those priorities, based on the outcome of those priorities.
Awesome. Jesse, you mentioned that you've given this a lot of thought, and it's quite clear how important the idea of intention is to your self leadership journey. Do you recall a moment where you realized how important the idea of intention would be to your journey?
I think it was in my previous business. When you have a small team and, there is only so much that can be done in a day, it's really, really critical to spend time doing things that matter and that make a difference to not only your bottom line, but make the business move forward and so on. And at first, I realized that I was still in the sort of employee's mindset that required me to, tick the boxes and complete a long list of tasks that probably didn't make a big difference to the overall organization. But as a founder, you can't afford to do this because your time is limited and there is so much that falls onto you. So I had to kind of shift that mindset, and that was in my previous business, and it's even more so important now. Now that as a startup that is funded from external investors, when you have a runway of that is that long, and therefore really your time really counts, and therefore you've got to be super mindful about how you spend it.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I feel like all of us other business owners can appreciate and empathize at the same time with the challenges that you've just described. And I don't mind how broadly or in depth you answer this question, if it's the wrong one. How much does that also apply to you, to Jesse, out of the workplace?
The way I live my life is fairly similar. I categorize my priorities in life. So you've got my family life, my romantic relationship, and I've got my work relationship, and I've got my relationship with my other family members, and I have my set of priorities, and for example, my relationship with my daughter is priority number one, and therefore the way I live my life, I set time for everything. And when it's time with my daughter, nothing else, can creep in and not even walk can do that. So it's the same thing about setting those priorities and spend my time on things that matter the most to me, so that I get the most benefit from it afterwards.
Love it, love it. And if we take a step back, I just when you first talked about what self-leadership means to you, Jesse, I instantly had to think of that book whose title I cannot remember. You know, the one that's called growth hacking or something like
Yeah,
that, isn't it? Where it's like, you come up with a hypothesis and then you test it and then you learn and then you iterate and that
yeah.
process, right? And I had to think of it because from what you're saying, it sounds a bit like that, right? Being very intentional, like not necessarily what am I going to test, but where am I going to try and put my priorities? Where am I going to try and put my focus? What comes of that? Were those the right things? And then also taking a step back and being like, okay, what have I learned? Is that a fair analogy to use?
It actually is, and so it's probably not on a daily basis that I reflect, but I would say maybe even on a weekly basis, I will look back and say, okay, so I decided to focus on X, Y, and Z this day or this week. What were the outcome of this? Have I really been spending my time on things that matter? If not, why is that? Did I get distracted, or was it just not the right thing to focus on? What should I be focusing on instead? So I do reflect, and then I adjust, and then I adjust it, and also business priorities shift all the time, as you know. So on Monday that might be the right priority, and then by Wednesday it's something completely different. So you gotta adjust and change things quite fast, and be okay with that as well. I guess it's part of the learning.
Absolutely. And you touched upon something really interesting here with the kind of the adaptability and adjusting to whatever comes your way. And something that I have been struggling with sometimes is how to find the right balance between planning. I'm a planner. I love my lists and I love to plan everything meticulously. Um, but sometimes, on the one hand, like external things happen that were not expected, but also sometimes it can get, to me at least, quite exhausting to be so like overly strategic about everything that I do. And sometimes my body and soul just yearn for a bit of, I don't know, downtime or doing something different. Maybe it's not the priority for today, but I feel really inspired to do that. And I guess what I'm curious about is, does it ever get exhausting for you to be so rigorous about your plan? And how do you find space to, yeah, to allow flow?
I think, the rigor that you were talking about, and the planning, I've had to, in a way, make peace with the fact that I can plan as much as I want. The startup world will mess up my plan. So I know that my plan is very short term lived, and that's okay. It took me a while because I always felt like I was only starting something and then I could never finish it fully because there was another priority that just crept in, and now I need to spend my time doing this instead. It took a while to adjust to this idea. But once you understand that it is just the nature of what you do, it doesn't mean that you're not achieving because you didn't tick the box fully. You only have ticked the box, Doesn't mean you're not achieving. It means that you're actually spending your time where it matters. And you'll go back to this, or you will delegate and somebody else will finish what you started. And that's fine. As long as it gets done, it doesn't really matter who does it. You can be the one starting it, setting the structure, essentially briefing somebody to finish it off, because you have to focus on other more important things. But it took a minute, just to get used to this idea, because I like to finish things when I start them, but it's just not always possible.
Gosh, I know the feeling. I know the feeling.
Mm.
And is there anything that's helped you to let go of that idea that everything needs to be finished?
I think being able to delegate it to someone else, it kind of tricks my mind into thinking, well, at least it will be finished, not by me, but somebody else will do it. And if I have started it, when I start something, I always try to start it in such a way that I would know how to pass it on to someone else. So I don't just do it and in a way that is going to require work to pass it on to someone else. I kind of structure it from the beginning, from the get-go, that if somebody needs to take over, the information is there. They know where to find things, what the instruction is. So I think that helped me. If I don't always have somebody to take on that thing and finish it for me, I add it to my long list of things that we need to get done. And then on a weekly basis, I'll look back at that list and then see how I can fit everything that couldn't be finished into the next week and prioritize them this way. But it doesn't happen too often because we do have support from other team members that can take on some things, especially if it's not like that big. But it's not something that is massively strategic. You can delegate.
Mhm. Brilliant. And I love that we're kind of in the thick of some practicalities already. And that takes me directly to asking you, Jessy, about what's the first self-leadership practice that's really been a game changer for you and that you are going to share with our listeners today?
So I mean, it's very similar to what I was talking about. For me, I have what I call a morning intent ritual. I'm talking business here, right? So every morning I set my priorities for the day, my business priorities for the day, before I even start working. So I look at what are we trying to achieve in the next week or month or however long, and what is on me to complete, and therefore I will set a list of three priorities, maximum three. If I can get more done, great. But at least three sounds like something I can achieve. Hopefully, if there isn't too many distractions coming throughout that day, and then I block time in my calendar to complete each of those things. I I always make sure that when I pick these three things, they are things that can be done in however long I go, because it's so easy to say I'll do this full strategy in an hour, and it's completely unrealistic. So I make sure that if I'm going to spend an hour on that strategy, then I have another hour more for the same thing to finish it off or continue. So yeah, I try to do this every morning so that I can plan my day and feel like by the end of the day, I have actually achieved something. I've moved, one step forward towards the goal that we're trying to achieve.
Makes sense. And when you go through this exercise that you said is every morning, I'm guessing from that it's like a similar-ish time. How do you think about ranking or prioritizing the three most important tasks? Because sometimes it can be difficult to assess what those three most important tasks are. Sometimes they feel very similar in terms of impact, and I know from experience it can be really difficult. So, like, do you have any tips, tricks, hacks, models that help you make that decision?
I don't have any like model, but I think for me, it's usually quite simple because we always have a burning priority in a startup life because things change so fast, and therefore revenue is always first priority. Fundraising is the second priority. So it's always something to do with one of those things, and therefore I will pick the one activity that will get us closer to revenue that only I can do, and then I'll pick the one activity that has to do with fundraising that will get us closer to raising money. Either it's finishing the financial model or tweaking this or whatever it is to get us closer to, closing that angel or that VC or whatever it is. So there are these big themes that are always a priority, and then I'll pick one of the tasks within those themes for the day.
Makes sense. Is that something that you've passed on to the rest of your team, or is that something that you use for yourself?
My co-founders, I think, I'm pretty sure they do the same, but we each have our CTO, for example, with him obviously of the technical build, right? But he always has his fundraising, but he has his fundraising responsibilities as well. Not so much sales, but fundraising at the very least. So we all do that, even if we haven't officially said this as a practice, but we all do it in reality. Yeah. The rest of the team, I would say probably not so much because obviously their roles are very specific. They are there to do one thing. But I'm guessing within their sets of responsibilities, they also have, buckets or themes that keep recurring, right? So, we haven't, intentionally communicated this to the team. So maybe we should.
Maybe. Maybe. I have one final question on this. When Anna and I discussed the idea of doing this type of podcast, one of the motivations for it was we felt like a lot of the content that we both consumed was picture perfect. It was I do the same thing at the same time every day, which like we both kind of feel is probably
Not true.
unrealistic. And like one of the things that we didn't want this show to become was this is how things happen to me every single day and my days are perfect, etc. So with that in mind, like the two questions I wanted to ask you is A, when was the last time you didn't get the chance to do the priority list? And B, when you on those occasions where inevitably sometimes you can, how do you react to that? And like what contingency plans do you have in place to get around it?
Okay, so yesterday I didn't do that, for example. Yesterday is
Nice.
a very good example. I had to go to the office. We had a couple of in-person meetings. The commute to the office is the time when I usually do that. Therefore, by the time I got to the office, it's time to start working. So I just got on with the day. Those meetings lasted longer than they were meant to last. Therefore, they ate into the entire day. And I got out of there at 5 something thinking, what did I do today? Like, realistically, what did I achieve? It didn't feel like a massively productive day, I must admit. It's always the same when I go to the office because there are so many distractions, the commute is a waste of time and all that kind of stuff. So maybe I feel like I didn't achieve much, but just sitting next to my co-founder Yana for a day and just chatting about something that came to my mind or her mind in that moment, and we spent half an hour doing it, even if it wasn't in the calendar, there was still value in that. And even if at the end of the day I don't think of it, but actually there is value there. So it's about relaxing, and sometimes you don't have to be a productivity machine all day, every day. There will be days when you feel like you've done nothing, and that's okay. And you probably haven't anyways. Adapting, the adaptation is really important.
I absolutely love that, especially the takeaway that there are so many super valuable things that are less tangible, but still very real and
Value.
very, yeah, like sitting next to your co-founder and having that unscheduled conversation. Fantastic. So with that in mind, shall we move on to your second self-leadership practice?
Yes. So this one is again still to do with business. It's about reviewing and forward planning on a weekly basis. So at the beginning of each week, we have a stand up between the three of us where we set the priorities for the week for each of us. And at the end of the week, we also have a meeting where we look back, at, based on the priorities that we discussed on Monday, how well did we do? Did we, make any progress on everything and so on? This helps us to make sure that we're not just saying things and not really following through. We have that level of accountability. And if we haven't done something that we were meant to be doing, we need to explain to the others why, what happened, what crept in that preventing us from doing this, or whatever it was. So it adds that extra level of accountability. And another thing that we've done not too long, maybe a few months ago, was, actually to record this in, on a like product management board as well to really track, the things that we're focusing on. These things are also categorized by themes as well. So we we're not just saying things, but we can go back to it and remind ourselves, what am I meant to be doing this week? It's Wednesday. Did I do the stuff that I was talking about on Monday? Like, oh, I haven't done any of this. Okay, let me focus on this now. Kind of in case you got busy with other things. So we track this on a board as well.
Makes sense. Is that Trello or a different piece of software?
Oh, we use ClickUp.
Right. Interesting.
We use ClickUp for our, internal messaging, project management, product management, and many other things.
And tell me, Jesse, for somebody who's listening and who's not, say, a founder or not in charge of a team, what do you think they could learn or implement from what you've said for their own lives, be it personal or professional?
I think, so on a personal level, also it's something that I do on a yearly basis with my other half, with my wife. At the end of each year, on the 31st of December, we spend time setting ourselves goals for the year. And now those goals are theme based, right? We have our financial goals. They're all personal, but financial goals, professional, family, baby, whatever it is. We set ourselves goals and we review them on a quarterly basis. It's quite similar to this instead of weekly, to yearly and then quarterly or monthly, however you want to do it. The reason why we do this, um, I suppose, it's because, a year of your life is such a long time, right? You can be achieving so many things in a year if you are intentional about it. And you can also be doing practically nothing in a year's time if you're not. And therefore, we've been doing this for the last 7 years now. And it's amazing how you can see the improvements when you track things because you are more conscious of it all. So, for example, in year one, I think one of my professional goals was to complete a course in whatever it was. And I did that, which led me to in year two, getting that promotion. And then in year three, and so on. So you can kind of see a growth trajectory just by being a bit intentional about it. And that's it's on a yearly basis. So it's not like I wasn't thinking about this every week of that year. Clearly not. After, the first quarterly review, I was like, oh, I said I was meant to be doing this course. I even looked at the price. Like, where can I do it? Like, and so then in Q2, I started looking into it and by Q3, I had done it. But if I didn't have this, check-in point and even this goal to begin with, I would probably have not done the course because, well, it wasn't a burning priority, but that helped me grow and that helped me get a promotion overall and so on. So we do that on a personal level and that's what we're doing on a business level on a weekly basis too, because obviously it was
I had two thoughts on this. A is a selfish reflection that I had the same answer in my episode of the podcast. So on New Year's Eve, I'll be thinking of you because we'll be doing exactly the same activity and spending it in the same way. So it sounds like a good night in to me too. The second thing I thought is actually this theme of intention continues because what I hear you talking about here is intention around execution, i.e., we sit down once a year and we essentially pull into the year these goals that we're going to do. And that allows us to be really intentional about what we action over the next 365 days, as it were. So it's kind of like intentional. It's intentional on the micro scale. But then there is this element as well. There's a theme of being intentional on the macro scale because in order to try and pull in to the year, these things that you want to achieve and do or experience or whatever it may be, you need to be intentional about what you're trying to do on the macro level because these ideas have to come from somewhere else as well. And so I think it's like an interesting reflection that this idea of intention is throughout. It's not in business, it's not a annual thing. It's an intention is this way of being as a whole. That's what I've taken away from your answer anyway. It's not really a question, but it was something that really resonated with me.
and what it does on the 31st of December, we don't just set the intention for next year. We do a reflection on the year that just passed. So we look at, okay, what did I say I would do? Go back to that page. And by the way, we write it by hand. It's also intentional. So we write it all by hand. We have a book, like a notepad, and I have my pages. She has her pages, and we write it all by hand. So we look back at, okay, a year ago I said I would do X, Y, and Z. What did I do? What did I not do? Oh, I didn't do that. I said I was going to do this. Why didn't I do it? Okay, then I'll put it back for next year. But also, gosh, I've achieved all of these things and I didn't even realize. I feel so great about myself right now. I've grown so much. I have whatever it is. Like, I was intentional about spending time with my parents and my grandmothers and whatever. Like, I have actually done something and I feel so good about myself. I go really pumped up for next year, and I can be even more ambitious about what I want to achieve next year. And this is a great way to start the year. Honestly, like I absolutely love it. We're always looking forward to that moment because it's a way to feel better about yourself and be more ambitious.
What a beautiful ritual to ease into the new year with. In terms of the intentionality that we were talking about, I'm curious, Jessy, how do you go about deciding what topics you want to focus on? I mean, you said that you've got some broad categories, but even those, right? Like, what guided you to choose those specifically?
I think they are just the main aspects of your life, right? You've got me, myself, and I, so personal development. You've got your relationship. If you are in a relationship with someone, if you're married or not, doesn't really matter. You have your children if you have children. You have your extended family with parents, the extended family. You have your friends. You have your finances. You have your job or business. So these are all the things that are in your life all the time, right? And it's so easy, for example, if you're running a business, to just do that and then miss out on everything else. Never call your grandma, not even knowing if she's sick or not, not going to visit your family, not spending enough time with your kids. It's so easy because you have that one thing that is consuming your entire life, but everything else matters too. So if you are intentional about doing some of these things in the other aspects of your life and not just business, you make time for these things, you make room, and you will put the business on hold when it's time to be with your family. Because life is short and, business is not everything. It's not
One,
everything. So for me it's just critical because 10 years from now I will realize, okay, I've built a business that may or may not have succeeded. And then my kids are 12 and then I don't know them. And then it's hard. And I can't get those years back.
I see you nodding, Josh.
Very much so. Very, very, very much so. Yeah, and it made me think about something that you said, Anna, actually, about how do you handle the not being so rigid and not scheduling everything. Especially with having a kid, I find it really helpful to like schedule the downtime with the kid. So you don't necessarily schedule what I do as a dad, but you make time to not know.
Exactly.
And it sounds really obvious when you say it out loud, but I find like I really do need time to switch off from work Josh or any other version of Josh and just go and be dad Josh. And I think like scheduling that time to play and do nothing and just be dad, I think is super helpful. And I'm reluctant to compare it to running a startup, but like a startup, sometimes things come from left field, being a parent as well. And when you've got the startup and the children, it's difficult to plan sometimes. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like you need the plan, but you need the flexibility at the same time because I don't think we get through a week without one of those two things at least. Putting a
exactly.
curveball in there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things that, having children teaches you is that you can plan as much as you want. You can't plan with kids, right? So it was a also tough lesson to learn, when you like to have things planned. But that really helped me on the business side. Being a
Yeah,
mother really helped me just relax about some things because you
yeah.
can't control everything. You cannot.
Fantastic. So, shall we move on to not our, your third self leadership practice, Jessy?
Sure thing. So the next one is it's not necessarily doesn't necessarily happen every day, but I would say a few times a week at the very least. To find a moment in the day, especially when things get really big, is to anchor myself and breathe. It's kind of like a deep breath meditation. There are moments where you're doing something that's quite stressful, you have a deadline or whatever, and so when I am either done or decide to take a break, I will do the box breathing, 4 in, count, stop for 4, and then 4 out, count for 4, so and then 4 out, and that really helps me slow down the breathing and the anxious breathing that is happening there. It helps me calm down and then just reset the thinking. Um, I it, I find that at least really at the daily lately, I've been doing this quite a lot throughout the day, so not necessarily just once a day. Whenever I need it, it really helps. It really helps, and you don't have to do it sitting down. You can just go for a walk and do it when you're walking. Go outside in your garden, just walk around and just try to empty your mind, calm yourself down, and get back at it. That helps a lot.
Is this a habit or practice that you feel that you do more proactively or reactively?
Sadly, it's reactive. At this point, it is. I would recommend doing it proactively. I think it will be a lot more beneficial. But for you to do that, I guess to be very aware of your body. Sometimes, you're working at your laptop and you don't realize how tense you are because you're doing something that requires focus or concentration or whatever. I wish I was sometimes more aware of moments when I'm completely tense and I would realize more. But it's really when I reach a certain point that I'm like, oh, I'm super stressed. I should do that. Maybe I've tried putting in my calendar, to do it every however often. I never do. I never do. I always skip it because something else is more important.
It's tough, isn't it? Like it instantly made me think of my jaw of all things. So I have a lot of pain in my jaw, and a lot of tension there, which crazily enough, I only realized once I started doing body scans in meditations. And prior to that, I was never even aware of it. And so I was like, whoa, this is intense and it's kind of ever present. So let me go to a physiotherapist. And I found a really good one who was like, yes, you can come on a semi-regular basis and we can do stuff here, but the real work is for you to do day in, day out. And he was like, set yourself an alarm every 2 hours. I mean, during the day, not at night, obviously. Um, and whenever the alarm rings, check what state your jaw is in, and then release, let go of the tension. And it was such an eye-opening exercise for me to start doing that, because literally every single time the alarm rang, I was like
You
noticing
realize
that
how
how tense I was exactly. And then like after, I don't know, a few weeks of doing it, I started like also checking in outside of the alarms and
close
being
your
like,
eyes.
let's let go. Yes, it's so fascinating, that, isn't it?
It requires discipline, but I think it's worth doing though. Doing it more proactively than reactively. But if you can only, do it reactively, at least you do it. And it will at least will bring you some calm, in the moment when you do it.
And I would say doing it reactively is huge in and of itself already, right? And I'd love to hear the kind of the one key benefit that it gives you, Jessy.
It really helps to, you see how sometimes when you're quite anxious or stressed and you have this sort of ball in your chest right in the middle there. You can't really pinpoint what is the cause of it, but there is something there that is making you tense. What it does, it removes that ball. Like I don't feel it anymore afterwards. So this breathing exercises just slows down my breathing, and it calms me down. It brings a sense of calm, which allows me to then either start again or start something different that I was doing, but in a different mindset. So I'm not just like all like anxious, and I'm just more relaxed. Yeah, yeah. I think it brings back a sense of calm that I don't have often.
I think that sounds incredibly valuable, and actually is probably a key prerequisite to gaining intentionality, or to regaining intentionality. No, because what I find is that when we're being hijacked by our anxiety or anger or whatever it may be, we're not really in full control and agency over what we're going to do next.
Or
So it
say,
sounds, or say,
"Hmm,
absolutely, let alone think. So it sounds to me like it's also a very powerful practice to get back to being in a place where you can be intentional. No,
yeah."
I love that. So Jessy, tell us about practice number 4.
Fourth one is something that I have attempted to do on a daily basis. I have not managed, but I'm doing it a few times a week at the daily. It's essentially reflective journaling. I've tried to do this in various different ways. I've tried writing it in some sort of like notebook. Um, I've tried also apps, like those AI apps where you can actually just record your voice. You talk about your day, what you're grateful for in the day, what didn't go so well. And I'm doing this on my own, by the way, on my own, so nobody around me, so I don't feel conscious about anything. I can speak quite honestly about things that went well, things that didn't go so well, things I'm grateful for, and so on. And then it's kind of like me closing the day. Like now the day is done. I've summed it all up, and I can go to bed knowing that I've achieved some things didn't go so well, and it happens, and maybe I'll try that differently tomorrow, or it could be as silly as we had a tough bedtime because my daughter kept crying for whatever reason, and it's just the end of the day, and you're frustrated, and you're like, okay, maybe. So I'm, I'm saying, okay, I was very frustrated at that time. Tomorrow maybe I'll try something different. Um, but just saying it and reflecting on it helps me to come up with a better strategy for that specific thing that happened. So yeah, I'm wish I did it every day because it really helps. It really is beneficial. But yeah, sometimes I feel it.
And how long have you been doing this practice for?
Well over a year, I would say. Well over a year.
And if you had to try and sum up the main motivation for starting to do this, because you've talked through a few of the benefits there that you take from doing the journaling, what was the one outcome you were hoping for when you started to try this practice?
I think initially it was all about gratitude. I I was aware that being intentional about being grateful about what you have in your life can bring quite a lot of happiness in your life. So I was trying. That was the initial reason. So it
Hmm.
wasn't even. I wasn't even talking that much about work when I was doing it. Now I'm bringing everything that happened in the day, right? And in the end, it's not just about listing. Okay, I'm grateful for this and this and this and that. That found it. That to me, that was a. It wasn't a great exercise. Sometimes you didn't have a great day, and therefore you try to make up things that you're grateful for, and but you still don't feel great, and that's okay. There are days when it was a rough day, and then I started talking about what was tough about that day. So I realized that mixing it, it being about being gratefulness, but or in gratitude, and then also just reflecting on the day in itself, and not if it goes well in the day necessarily. It felt like a more natural way of doing it, as opposed to just looking or trying to find things that I'm grateful for.
Got you, got you. And how important have you found the environment to the art of journaling? Unless you do it in exactly the same place every single day, which to me sounds like unlikely. Like, have you noticed any benefits or impact to doing it in different locations or at different times of day? Like, how important have you found environment to the practice of journaling?
To me, it's really important. It has to be at the end of the day, otherwise, it's not a full summary of my day. So the moment is the time of the day is important, and also what's around me also is important. I personally prefer doing it on my own in the dark, downstairs. So if my wife is upstairs and my daughter is sleeping, I'm downstairs in the dark. Maybe my cat is around, and I'm doing. I need to be on my own, and I suppose I prefer in the dark because it's less distraction. I'm not just looking at this thing passing by and then I'm distracted, right? Um, for me, it's much better. I've tried doing it, maybe going on for a walk, right? Towards the end of the day. Then too many distractions. There's a car that passes by and then there's a dog that is barking and I'm distracted. So I like, for me, it works better on my own in the dark at home with nobody around me, so nobody can hear what I'm saying.
Got you. And if I think about some of the practices that you've described already, even if it's other practices that have come out in your answers as well, there's quite a few things that you either try to do or you are able to do almost on a daily basis, which is really cool. But then I also know from experience, like sometimes those daily rituals, you wake up or you do it at night, and it feels like a chore. It feels like another thing that we've got to do in what is already a very busy day. So my question here is less specific to the art of like journaling, but more to ask, how do you try to keep these kind of daily practices fun and intentional as opposed to feeling like another thing to do in a busy day?
It's a very good question. I think in days when you feel like I've got to do this, I choose not to do it because I don't want to associate a negative feeling to these things that are meant to be making me feel better. What I tell myself when I choose not to do it or I have forgotten to do it is that I don't have to be so harsh on myself for not doing it or for forgetting to do it or for not wanting to do it. And also, as you rightly said, I'm doing a few different things anyways. So it looks like looking at a week, I've done probably one thing a day anyways for self-development and self-care. And therefore, that's probably good enough because my life is busy.
I so love your phrasing and the way you put it of I choose not to do it. That to me sounds so powerful because once again, it's a very intentional thing, right? Like you intentionally put these rituals in place, but you also very intentionally choose not to do them if they don't serve you anymore. Um, Funnily, this brings back my theology and religious studies undergraduate degree, where I remember we were discussing a passage from the New Testament, and it was Jesus with some of his disciples. Gosh, I never thought this would come up on this podcast, but here we go. Jesus and his disciples walking through a field of wheat, and it was a Sabbath, so work was not you were not allowed to work, but they were hungry and they didn't have anything to eat. So then Jesus started plucking the wheat, and someone said to him, but what are you doing? It is forbidden to work on a Sabbath. And then he said, the law was made for mankind, not mankind to obey the law.
Mm-hmm.
So the law is there to help you get closer to, in this case, God and love and self-love and so on. Um, and it's important to observe it in most cases because it will get you there. But at the same time, it's not about being imprisoned by it and then
Mm-hmm.
clinging onto the rules and rituals whilst forgetting the real intention behind it. And yeah, it just brought that up for me. So here we go.
Exactly. And because, I mean, it's so easy to beat ourselves up. Saying, oh, I thought I would do this, and I thought I would exercise X amount of days a week or whatever. And then you feel bad about yourself, and then it kind of pushes you even more further away from achieving your goal. Because like, well, I already missed yesterday, I might as well just miss today. No, this isn't the point, right?
Mm.
Sometimes things happen and you couldn't do what you said you were going to do. Then don't beat yourself up for it. Just be like, okay, well, I'll try again tomorrow. It's not, life or death situation. And it's supposed to be make you feel good. So don't beat yourself up for it because then it's the opposite of what it was meant to be doing. It's not meant to box you into this. Our days are already so regimented by things that we have to do. This is not one of them.
Yeah, and it made me think of a quote that I really like when you were speaking then, which is it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great, which is kind of like the summary of what you're saying, right? You don't have to do all of them every day, all day. It's better to be consistent than be amazing every now and again.
Brilliant. And so that then takes us to the final self leadership practice that we're going to get into today. What is that, Jessy?
I feel like I've sort of spoken about this earlier a little bit. It's about boundary management. That can apply to my personal life, but also work life. And my co-founder Slav does that as well. We have we put in our calendars. We block some time in the calendars for things that for us are important. So, for example, it's got sport and then family time and then get kids ready for school in its calendar. And these times are sacred and blocked. And we all know that we can't book anything at this time, or otherwise you can't expect them to be there because these times are important to it. And I do that as well. As busy as we get, etc., especially when you run a business, it's important to set some time aside to have lunch. You don't necessarily to take a full hour, but try to at least get up, go get the food, eat it somewhere else, and come back. Even if you do it in 20 minutes, but not necessarily all every single day at the screen. It happens to me. I would lie if I said it didn't. But I try to block that time at least so that I don't have to eat my lunch because somebody has put a meeting in there and essentially took that time away from me, made that decision for me. And also I'll obviously have the time when it's in my daughter time. Nothing can touch that, and it's I think to me this is like one of the most important things when it comes to running a business, because it's so easy for it to consume you entirely. That I don't want this to happen to me, so I broke the plans.
That's, yeah, setting effective boundaries right in action. And what struck me about what you were saying, Jessy, was that it seems that you're very clear on what your priorities are in life and what you place most value on. And for our listeners and those who are maybe still in the process of figuring out, hey, what is it that really matters so much to me? What do I want to protect and set boundaries around? Where do my priorities and values lie? Do you have any pointers for them, or any kind of insights from your own journey of identifying what's core to you?
Simple question you can ask yourself: 10 years, 20 years from now, what are the things that you will regret not having done the most when you are in your 20s, or 30s, or 40s? So look at it from the perspective of your physical health. For example, if you choose on a daily basis to sit all day, every day, not standing up, or the wrong posture, whatever, for 20 years, in 20 years from now, you will have pain here and pain there and so on, right? So these are small things that you can do every single day to prevent this from happening, right? Which is maybe setting up a memo in your calendar to stand up every hour, go for a quick walk and come back. Small things. Or time with your kids. Like I mentioned before, you will regret it if you don't intentionally take the time, because there will always be something to do with the business. Never ends. There's always something else to do. Even if you feel like you've done everything, there is something more. So you could be walking literally all day, every day if you wanted to. So I think to me, it's more about looking back at, oh, will I regret it if I didn't take care of myself mentally, physically? I didn't spend time with my kids. I didn't exercise. I didn't. If so, what can I do today, in my day to day, in my week by week, to make sure that I don't have these regrets in 10, 20, whatever, however many years time.
I find your clarity and that groundedness with which you just said that so inspiring. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
The question I had was, you spoke about boundaries as being, protecting this time that you have, for example, with your child. Do you do it the other way around as well? Do you have any protected time in work for specific activities or anything like that? Or is it to protect work from creeping out? Or do you have anything else to protect other things creeping in?
I do. So for example, I drop her off at 8 a.m. at nursery. I pick her
Mhm.
up at 5. And therefore my work window is this: 8 to 5. You see, sometimes after she goes to bed, it can happen, but this is mostly my main time to work. And therefore, I block also this time to be the most productive I have to be at work, because that's the only moment that I have where I will not have distractions, which is my daughter being around and things like this. So I do protect my work time versus my family time versus my alone time as well. I block these times as well. Yeah, I think it's important to do, of course, because you don't want to be blocking time for everything else, and then you realize you got 3 hours to work every day. That's not gonna that's
Yeah.
not gonna fly, right? That's not gonna fly. So it's it just requires quite a lot of discipline, I think, in all aspects of your life. But doing this, I think, can give you so much balance in all of the different aspects of your life, that that's the only way to keep doing this for years and years, because it's quite intense.
Mm. Wise words. And I think with that, we will conclude our discussion today. Jessy, thank you so much for having joined us today and for sharing all of your valuable insights, tips, and self-leadership practices with us. And yes, another great episode comes to an end, and I look forward to having a lot of our listeners join us again at the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Thank
Jesse.
you.